Hi, how's everyone feeling? Are you energized? I heard there are a lot of good things downstairs. Is it? Delicious food? Are they delicious? The lunch? Photo booth? Have you guys all tried? My name's Kathy. Welcome. I'm one of the members of the founding team of ALLEYCON. I would like to thank all of you that's coming here to ALLEYCON. Also, I would like you to take a moment to enjoy how beautiful this venue is. Look at this. I'm going to put an inside joke, but Columbia business students, close your eyes. Think about yours. Open your eyes. We're here. This is real. I don't know if you have watched a video before, but it was talking about how you make a group of people start dancing for no reason. Does anyone know? It was not the first people who started dancing. It was the second people who joined him dancing. And I think for us, the team, we are the crazy people who started dancing in the center for no reason. And there are a lot of people who join us as the second person. And I will especially like to thank those sponsors. Microsoft, who is our marquee sponsor, who sponsored this amazing venue. And they also supported us with speakers. There are two people I'd especially like to thank at Microsoft. Is Jack Ryder. He's also a CBS alum, graduated in 1993. Also Scott Nitz. He's also a CBS alum, graduated in 2015. And I think they are the CBS alum that we all aspire to contribute back to the CBS community. I would also like to thank Knotel. Have you guys tried to sit on those fancy sofas? Do you all guys want to work in a place like that? Knotel sponsored those lounges, and that make the conference much more amazing. I'd like to thank Wandering Bear for sponsoring cold brew coffee. We have a lot more stacked coffee down there. Grab some, grab for your mom and dad, friends. We'll have a lot more. So now I would like to invite Dan Wang to open the stage for scale section. Dan Wang is one of the most youngest, talented, energetic professor from Columbia. I'm so happy to have him on stage. Please come.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm excited to host this afternoon's Grow portion of ALLEYCON, mostly because we have three wonderful speakers, one of which is sitting right next to me. One of the reasons that I'm honored to introduce the speakers for the Grow portion of this conference is that I teach an elective class at Columbia Business School called Technology Strategy. And a lot of our class is about platform and marketplace businesses, like what you're about to see. Now, in teaching this class, I'd say that the question that comes up most is not how do you launch a company or how do you sustain a competitive advantage, which is a question that we're all kind of tired of trying to answer, but more how do you grow, how do you scale, and we don't really have the time to get into all the frameworks and everything right now, but I think when it comes to technology platforms, answering this question early in a company's growth is important. And it really essentially just comes down to answering and understanding that a platform is a way to solve a matching problem between customers and suppliers in such a way that creates unexpected value for both. And I think there's no better person to help us get started to talk about this problem than Hayley Barna, who is the co-founder of Birchbox and currently a general partner at First Round Capital here in New York. Now, in case you haven't heard of Birchbox, Birchbox is a subscription service that sends members customized boxes of beauty accessories and samples for about $10 each month, right? Very good deal. They've even had a box for men, I learned recently, since 2011. So I just ordered one yesterday, and I will let you all know how that goes.
We need to have a before and after picture,
yes.
maybe.
Maybe not. So here's some company history and data about Birchbox. Hayley and her co-founder started the company while they were MBA students at Harvard Business School in 2010. And to date, the company has over, so these are my latest numbers, but you can update me if it's okay. Yeah. They have over about $80 million in venture capital funding, and last year, Birchbox generated $200 million in revenue, and as of 2017, Birchbox sent boxes to over 1 million subscribers. In 2016, Hayley left Birchbox as co-CEO to join First Round Capital, which was the lead investor in Birchbox's seed round, and today, she's First Round's first female general partner. Needless to say, Hayley's resume is impressive. So I'm excited to have a fireside chat with her for all of you. So please join me in welcoming Hayley today. So I think this is how it's going to go. I think we're probably going to have about 10 to 15 minutes together, then we'll open it up to the audience, if that's okay with everyone here. And I think we have runners as well for the microphone. And so once we're done, I'll gesture to you, and then that's how we can get started. So Hayley and I were kind of talking a little bit before this, and I'd love to begin with a bit about the origin story of Birchbox, but something very specific, because it's interesting that you founded the company with your co-founder at Harvard Business School as students. It's not easy to balance like a job search with classes, with clubs, with extracurricular activity, and founding a company all at the same time. Can you talk about what that was like, the entrepreneurial process as a student, and whether any of your peers in business school influenced you at all?
Yeah, of course. So my co-founder and I had the idea for Birchbox when we were second-year students at HBS. I don't think we would have been able to find time for that the first year, but frankly, the second year, it was all costume parties and yoga classes and naps. I don't know, that's Harvard. Maybe it's different at Columbia Business School. So we had a lot more time on our hands. And we do all case method at HBS. So we had spent over a year putting ourselves in the CEO mindset, saying, if you were in charge of this business, what would you do? And we're like, okay, we've got some months until we graduate. We've been pretending to be CEOs of businesses in theory for 60 minutes during a class. What if we actually just start a business? Wouldn't we learn more from that? And we, our friendship had been based on a lot of bad business ideas, to be honest. Things like meggings, leggings for men, a restaurant that would only serve spherical food items.
I'm writing down meggings.
They exist now. They exist now. Just go to Brooklyn. And so together, the two of us had built the muscle of at least batting back and forth business ideas. We had also planned spring break for 40 people in our section, which is quite a stressful, high stakes, and a lot of money involved kind of thing, and we had done that successfully. And so when the good business idea hit us, we knew both that it was good compared to the other ones, but also that we would work well together in getting it done. And it was really just an idea over Thai food dinner over Thanksgiving break. But the next morning, one of us emailed each other being like, that idea for how to help people find the right beauty products for them and how to help beauty brands find new customers, that was a good one. And it just sort of snowballed. We emailed back and forth. We didn't write a business plan. What we did was start talking to everyone. We were sort of anti-stealth. We talked to everyone who had worked at a startup before, any of our friends that had been in venture capital. We talked to our professors. We were like, anyone who is smart, we were like, we have this idea, what do you think? And we got a lot of nodding heads. And we're like, okay, smart people think this isn't awful. And then we went from there being like, okay, we need great brands to be involved with this. We can't just go to consumers and be like, trust us, give us money for surprise, we needed to say that there were brands that they'd heard of. So we cold emailed beauty brands, and we just didn't send them a pitch deck or anything. We just sent them a one-page PDF with a concept. And then from there, we built a website. We got 200 customers. We did a whole MVP while we were in school. And frankly, I think it was easier doing it while we were students. I think we got responses to those cold emails because we could say, hi, we're two Harvard Business School students, right? That sort of disarms people and also makes them want to help you, right? When you've got the air cover of being a student. And our professors were really supportive. Basically, second semester, we took everything that we could do in terms of independent study, like credits towards Birchbox. And every class I took, I wrote the paper about Birchbox or made the final presentation about Birchbox. And I think there was one professor that I just knew, like, I did not even have time to read the cases. I was being awful in the class, and I just went to office hours, and I was like, look, I'm starting this business, and I'm sorry that I haven't been speaking up in class. But he wrote me a few years later to congratulate me on how well Birchbox had done afterwards. So
as a professor, I really appreciate that you took the time to.
Yeah, I think I was sort of self-conscious about it because I'm not usually the person who like hasn't read the cases and isn't raising her hands in class, so I felt like I needed to explain it. But I think it was fantastic having the business idea and being able to start, at least do the proof of concept while we were still in school.
It's very interesting to hear because right now you're actually serving is in a different role in which you get to see the evolution of enterprises from the other side. Knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would have told Hayley from 8 years ago that you wish that you really wanted her to know?
Yeah, so I think we did a great job of like just getting started. And that's something I tell founders all the time. Anyone who's like mulling over an idea and they're like, what do you think? Is this the right one? I'd be like, just do it. And I think we really were fantastic at just, getting it started. But the thing that we weren't so good at, and now I know a lot more about, was raising capital. So we made a bunch of newbie mistakes when we were raising our seed round / angel round. We didn't know if we wanted venture capital, to be honest, in the beginning, right? We had actually taken an entrepreneurship class where it made VCs seem like evil people that were going to fire you and take your business away from you. And we're like, angels, they sound nice. Like, let's raise from angel investors instead. So around the time we were graduating, we knew we wanted to move to New York to start the business. We started talking to angel investors. And it was like herding cats. Everyone would talk to us. They would say, love you, love the idea. They'd have a few more questions, and they'd have 3 more people for us to talk to. But no one was writing checks. And there were a few mistakes we made that now I would tell myself not to repeat. First, we had lost momentum. We had done this perfect little proof of concept. I was a consultant before business school, so I had made a beautiful slide deck that had sort of tied all that up with a bow and was like, here's what we did. But investors were like, well, what's happening tomorrow? Like, what's next month's numbers? What's next week's numbers? And we were like, well, give us money, and then we could start the business again. And so we were in this chicken and egg, like lost momentum situation. Big no-no. And we also talked to anyone with the title investor, sort of indiscriminately. And what we didn't realize is that it's a big leap to expect someone who had never invested in e-commerce or physical product or had no interest in the category of beauty to make their first investment in that space in us. So we were talking to people who had only done software, or they were scared to physically even touch the beauty samples in the boxes that we were bringing to them. And it just wasted a lot of our time. So what we ended up doing to recover from those mistakes is we were running like with our chickens with our heads cut off all over New York, taking these meetings and not actually raising any money. We decided to stop that. We said the most important thing is we actually launch this business again, and we create a great product and we delight our customers. So we raised from friends and family in the form of a loan, less than $100,000, just all that was necessary to rebuild the site and to get the first few months of the service up and running. And we just said no to any investors.
You said something really interesting earlier, which was that the way that you began thinking about this business is that nobody's going to buy it unless we are able to get partners on board. Now, I have to say and interject that this is a key part of technology strategy for platforms, which is the idea that if you have the other chicken and egg question of if you have a marketplace, you have 2 sides of the market, which one do you go for first? There's so many answers to this, and every situation is going to be a little bit different. A general rule of thumb is that the supply side is more important because you're essentially a vendor at this point. You're not necessarily a platform. Is that how you approach the problem? And related to that, as you were talking to these investors in your early days, what kind of advice did they give you, and was it geared at trying to solve a marketplace problem? What advice did you regard as useless, and what did you pull out of that as you embarked on the friends and family round?
Okay, so the first part of that in terms of like why the supply side first, I think it was just intuitive to us. We really, the idea was born out of our needs as consumers and some frustrations that we had. And we knew that, like, why would we pay for samples, which was something that had never been done before, right? Samples were always given away for free as a marketing expense or a loyalty program. Why would we pay if we didn't know what we were getting? We knew it was sort of a non-starter. And we also felt that we could credibly talk to the supply side about some challenges that were going on in the beauty industry or in the retail industry overall, with the shift from brick and mortar to online, especially beauty brands which are tied to department stores, which were doing particularly not so hot after the 2008 recession. And luckily, I had taken a pretty good tech strategy class that talked about two-sided platforms and how you have to mobilize one side. Did investors give us good advice on that? I don't think, nothing comes to mind. And I think now in my role as investor, I think I'm not supposed to tell people how to execute strategy. What I'm supposed to do is understand who they are as founders, their fit with the market, and the potential for the idea that they want to pursue. If any of you start a business and there's an investor that tries to change what you think is the right approach, I think that's actually a bad sign. I think you should look for investors that believe in you and will help support you and empower the path that you want to take.
So this is kind of something that I wanted to transition into right now, which is now your role at First Round. You started in February 2017, is that right?
Yep.
And so it's been
2016. So
2016. Can you talk about what was going through your mind when you made this decision? You seem to have described both good and bad experiences dealing with investors as an entrepreneur. Yeah. What aspect of that motivated you?
Yeah, so when I left my operating role at Birchbox, I'd been 6 years of every waking hour was devoted to this one business. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do next, but I sort of had a hypothesis that it would either be start something new, because I really loved building and operating, or perhaps go into more of an investing or advising role. My first foray into that was actually as an angel investor. So I felt so thankful. There were a few angels back in that time around we graduated that did actually sign checks. Gary Vaynerchuk, who has gone on to social media fame, and my friend Sam Lessin, who had a company in New York called Dropio that was acquired by Facebook, and he's now a VC, and founded another company. What those two people did for us and for Birchbox, by being the first money in, by looking at me and Katya and saying, you don't have any other investors, but I trust you and what you can do. I wanted to pay back and do that for someone else, especially first-time founders in the New York ecosystem. And I found a lot of energy from doing that angel investing and advising, especially with first-time founders. But my decision to join First Round was to have a broader platform that I could leverage. Also, investment is an apprenticeship business. You don't know if you're good at it until maybe 5 to 10 years later, when you see if any of the companies that you've invested in have actually returned capital to your investors. And I wanted to learn from people who had been doing it for a while. And First Round had invested in Birchbox, and I saw the differentiated value add that they had provided to me as a founder. And I wanted to be able to credibly sort of sell that product to founders. I wanted to believe in the products that we were giving to founders in return for their equity, and First Round was basically the only place that I wanted to do that.
So throughout this entire process, you seem to have come across a lot of local opportunities. Is there something unique now that you've had the experience as an investor as well as an entrepreneur that makes you think that there's something unique about being in this field in New York City that's perhaps different from Silicon Valley or perhaps a place like Austin or other kind of hotspots, Colorado, Denver? Like, is there something unique about New York?
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think one is the types of businesses that are built here are sort of hybrid businesses. So they're usually tech and fill in the blank with a traditional industry that's been strong in New York, whether that's finance, fashion, beauty, advertising, increasingly healthcare, especially with the strength in pharma over the river in New Jersey. And I believe that sort of these tech-empowered businesses are some of the most interesting. And that was what our business was, right? We couldn't be in San Francisco. There's literally 2 beauty brands based there. We had to be in New York. And we also knew that our growth would be fueled by media coverage, and we wanted to be close to the publishers and the people that could provide that to us. The second thing is the size of the tech community. It's a smaller pond here compared to San Francisco, and I actually like that. I think it's a friendlier and more collaborative tech ecosystem. It's definitely scaled in the 8 years that I've been actively a part of it. And I believe that New York will continue to see really big exits and really big companies grown here. And I'm committed to helping that happen.
Okay, so the last question from me is going to be about what you think about the future of retail, especially in this kind of space. One way that you can approach what Birchbox and other similar services did was that they disrupted, in many ways, the retail space in terms of changing the supply chain architecture, changing the economics of the logistics aspect of it. Do you think that trend will continue, or do you feel like this is kind of a saturated space in some ways now?
Ooh, I think it is like totally up in the air in terms of what the future of retail will be. I think that the thing that's pretty clear is that that you can't have separation between channels anymore, and the customer has more power than ever. I think the future of retail has to be extremely customer-centric. I also think it has to sort of serve the customer wherever they are, whether that's in the real world, offline, on their mobile device or elsewhere. And I think brand matters more than ever, and transparency of that brand to the consumer. I think one of the big things around the time that Birchbox was launching was about, okay, how much will online penetrate into the overall retail landscape? There were some categories like books and music that were close to 100%. Amazon had tipped that. But what would happen in other categories? And I think my personal perspective is that, I personally am buying more online this year than I did last year, and I expect that next year I will also be buying more things online. But I don't think it's going to go all the way to 100%. I think there's a role for physical retail in the long term, but that it has to change. It has to be more about doing things that you can't do well online in terms of experiences or entertainment or face-to-face interaction. And I think there's a lot of startups that are doing interesting things to go after that, but I also do think that some traditional brands, they've sort of fixed their mistakes, and they're starting to do interesting things as well. And then you just can't ignore Amazon. And they're the 800-pound gorilla in the retail ecosystem, and the innovation that they're doing is really impressive.
Terrific. I think we're ready to have any questions from the audience. I think we can go till 2:05. Is that right? Okay, I'm just going to assume that that's right.
Thanks so much, Hayley, for being here. I want to hear about your experience as an investor on that side of the table, and sort of what are your assessment categories, and in sort of your experiences both as a founder and operator, also as an MBA, which have you found to be most helpful in your life right now as an investor?
Yeah, great question. So first round, the funds that I work at, we're seed stage investors, which means that we're investing at the very earliest moments of a business. Most of the time that's pre-revenue, and often that's pre-product. In terms of the criteria that we make investment decisions behind, first is the overarching idea that we invest on behalf of our investors, our LPs, which are university endowments and nonprofits. And they're looking for us to put their money to work in the long term to get them a great return. And so we need to invest in companies that could be billion-dollar businesses one day. And I meet with a lot of companies that will be good $100 million businesses, but I have to say no to, because I really need to look for a clear path to 100 million, and that they could be multi-billion-dollar outcomes. In order to figure out if you could get there, we look at the founding team, we look at the market, we look at the product, and then if we decide to invest, the terms definitely matter. I personally love founding teams that come at something with an authentic, personal mission behind why they're doing it. More of the missionary than the mercenary approach to startups. And then we also look at the fit with the founder with that market. founder market fit. You know, we've had ex-Google software engineers tell us that they want to start a candle company. You know, don't do that, right? Like there are probably things that you'd be better at doing, and there are probably other people that would be better at starting a candle company, including, I think, a Columbia Business School alum who did that recently. But that's what we look at. And I think as a founder, I'm very optimistic when I meet other founders, because I say, if I could do it, I believe that you could do it too. I'm quite an optimistic investor. I'm also able to empathize with what it's like to raise your seed round in particular, which was the hardest round for us to raise. And in terms of evaluating, like, it probably is more of the business school and my consulting experience that helps me have the critical lens than my founder experience, except when it comes to things that are sort of in the business model that Birchbox had.
Hi, Hayley. Thank you for your time today. I was curious to know how you thought about the branding of Birchbox, where you never want to be perceived as a company that's delivering leftover inventories. Like, you want to be on top of the trends, the brands, and have you ever thought about getting the prestige beauty in your boxes? Or how did you, over the course of your 6 years from when you started till when you started to grow the business, how did that view change in your perspective? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I heard sort of two parts of that question. One is Birchbox as a brand, but also the brands, the beauty brands that we chose to work with. And we thought very carefully about both from the very beginning. Especially because the beauty industry is, I don't know, like snobby in some way, and there's a very big difference between the beauty products that you could get in a drugstore or a mass channel versus what you would get in a department store or Sephora, which is called prestige, and then there's a higher level called luxury beauty, and we operated squarely in the prestige category. The first few brands that we worked with, we knew would set the tone, and we often used the phrase brand neighborhood. That we wanted every new brand to feel good about moving into that neighborhood. And it was a mix between large, well-known brands like Benefit and Kiehl's, but then also new up-and-coming, hip, cool brands. And those two types of brands would feed off each other and create the right neighborhood. So very, very carefully thought about that. In terms of the brands of Birchbox, honestly, it was, you know, we sell other people's products, but a lot of what people sign up for is an experience, the holistic service of Birchbox. And we talked about it as grassroots meets glossy. We didn't want to be these beauty editors up in our ivory tower telling you that we know everything and you know nothing. We wanted to be like your friends. Probably the women in the room all have that friend they can text when they want to know like what the best mascara is or which bronzers are good. We just wanted to be that friend. We wanted to be educated but accessible. We had content and our voice as a really important part of our business model from the beginning. Our first hire was my close friend from college, Molly Chen, who is a beauty editor at Condé Nast. And she was actually, frankly, the inspiration for the whole service, because I knew nothing about beauty, and Molly would just give me beauty products when I was a consultant. She would be like, here, Hayley, this is what you do with this, and here's the brush that you use for it. And Birchbox, in some way, is just Molly come to life and scaling what Molly did for me for every woman or guy.
Hi. Earlier this week, I cold emailed an investor and pitched my concept for a construction tech company.
Cool.
And his response was, which came relatively fast, so I'm thinking he's somewhat interested, but his response was, the price point isn't compelling enough. I was kind of nervous to reply with like, what do you mean? Because I think we have pretty healthy margins. So now I'm like, what determines, what is a compelling price point for an investor?
That is such an investor adjective. Like we're always talking about like whether we're compelled by something. It's, I think don't read too much into the response. I don't think it's like a right answer or a wrong answer. He probably just wasn't interested in the business. And I'm impressed that he responded quickly and gave you an answer. Most investors, honestly wouldn't respond or would be vague about it. But I think my advice broadly, and this is probably frustrating, but try to get a warm introduction to investors. I think often if you can't find a warm introduction, then they judge you, I think, more harshly. And try to get a face-to-face meeting so that they can meet you and learn about your story and have you give a voiceover to whatever information you sent over. So it's the price point's probably fine.
Thank you very much. I had a question actually regarding how did you manage to convince actually large brands to join actually Birchbox? I mean, how was it? Was it easy? Was it difficult? How did you get in touch with them? And yeah, if you can tell a bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So I have to give all the credit here to my co-founder, Katya, who is a natural-born, charismatic salesperson who had a long history of successfully cold emailing even before she got to business school. She cold emailed Steve Jobs, and he sent her a free computer to use at HBS. So I basically aligned myself with the right co-founder. But we cold emailed the CEOs of our favorite brands, literally just guessed their email addresses, right? Like you just put all the permutations in BCC and it'll get to them. We put a compelling subject line saying reinventing beauty e-commerce, right? Gets your attention. And we didn't overload them with information or an ask. We just attached that one-page PDF. And we said, we're students, which helped. And then we said, do you have 5 minutes to give us feedback on our idea? And you kind of have to be an ass to say no to 5 minutes. So we had a really, really good response rate, at least to that email. And sometimes it was the CEO, or they would forward it to their head of marketing, or they'd forward it along. But those phone calls, then we'd tell them what we were doing, and we asked to set a meeting. In that meeting, we came in with a balance of, we're consumers who are, young, millennial wasn't really a term then, but we said, here's what we've experienced, and here's how we think things should work. What do you think? We want to build this with you. We want your feedback and input. We didn't come saying that we had all the answers. And we had a very small ask in some ways. We were just asking for a few hundred samples, which now, in hindsight, I realize they just had in their desk drawers. But the bigger ask was that they would align their brand, which is everything in the beauty industry, with an untested brand like ours. But I think the timing was right, and the insights and the trends that we identified in that pitch, they resonated with them. They knew that shopping was shifting online, but they knew that they couldn't sell with Amazon, and they also knew that new customers especially, weren't going to go to their own brand.com websites, that there needed to be an alternative channel that had the editorial perspective of magazines and that could represent prestige beauty in a beautiful and inspiring way. So I think all of that combined to help us get the right yeses, and then the right yeses helped us get more yeses. But for some brands, we were too small to start with, and we had to, like Frederick Fekkai, we met with him. I wanted him to touch my hair. It was amazing. And he said, come back to, it's great. He had gone to exec ed at Harvard Business School. He was like, but it's not worth it to us until you're 10,000 subscribers. And so after we launched, we grew quite quickly. So we were like, Frederick, we're ready, 10,000 subscribers. And then he was able to work with us. The brands that took the longest were the big conglomerates. So Estee Lauder and L'Oreal, it took years to get them on board, but they're now working with us quite robustly.
So I know that this question is probably quite wrong, but it seems that you have talked about your idea in the beginning a lot. Were you never scared that any of the brands or people would actually jump on your idea and just do it themselves?
So in the beginning, were we scared that the brands would do it themselves? I think you have to be quite fearless. As I said, we were sort of anti-stealth. And the semester that we thought of the idea was also the semester that both Katya and I took a class on disruption theory. And I think that might have been the most impactful class I took in business school in terms of giving me confidence that incumbents, even if there's a great idea staring them in the face, they're just incentives and cost structure and the way they do business really prevents them from being able to move quickly, especially when you're coming at something from a disruptive point of view, in which we really were. And I think the magic of Birchbox is the fact that we are this multi-brand retailer, and where we can be this overarching service layer. So I think it would have been hard for a brand to pull it off. We have been copied a bunch since we launched. Sephora now has a Birchbox called Sephora Play. Months after we launched, there was a German Rocket Internet, the Samwer brothers, like a German copycat factory that funded a Birchbox copycat with 5 times the amount of funding that we had at the time. And that's just business, and you have to focus on what your vision is and on execution, and that's what we've done.
Thank you so much, Hayley.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think we have some stage operations, right, before where you can. Do we have to move the chairs, or? Oh, okay. Okay. All right. While they're moving the chairs, okay.
The next speaker is all about the engagement spectrum. So if you want to crack jokes about how all our friends are getting. Oh. The haircut is a diamond.
Oh. Okay. Will do. All right. Oh, that's fine. I'll just introduce her, and then she'll take Q&A. Yeah, okay, all right, okay. Are we ready? Is my mic on? Is good? Okay, thank you so much, Hayley. That was so interesting. One thing I really appreciated about what Hayley said was that she told us that her view about what's unique about the New York tech scene, and it was very similar to how I describe it when a lot of folks ask me. She said tech and, I say tech plus. I guess and plus are synonyms, so that kind of works here. What I really like about what she said is that really anything can come after the and, or anything can come after the plus. And for that reason, that's why I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker, who will tell us all about tech and jewelry. Her name is Olivia Landau, and I can comfortably say that she is probably the only person in this room, or will be, that can claim to be a certified gemologist. So who here is a certified gemologist? No one. So I am right about this. Okay. Olivia is the founder of Clearcut, which is a marketplace that connects couples to customize diamond rings. So I hope all of you will be engaged. Okay. They connect them through a marketplace directly from wholesalers and cutters through a curated experience that's online. This would have been a lot less stressful if this were around when I got engaged a few years ago. The Clearcut is also currently a Techstars company, one of the most prestigious accelerators in the world. And as for her background, Olivia graduated from NYU, was certified as a gemologist, and her family has actually been in the jewelry business for 4 generations. So please join me in welcoming Olivia Landau to the stage.
Hi, everyone. So I actually wasn't a CBS student, but I was a better half of a student that graduated last year who happens to be my co-founder. And today we're going to talk about how to scale what's seemingly criticized as an unscalable business. So I'm Olivia. I'm a diamond expert, GIA graduate gemologist, and fourth-generation jeweler. I've worked in all facets of the jewelry industry, from retail at Tiffany & Company, wholesale at one of New York City's largest diamond wholesalers, and most recently, e-commerce at The RealReal. Many of you may think that I was probably predestined to work in jewelry because my dad came from a lineage of diamond cutters and dealers from Antwerp, Belgium, which used to be the diamond capital of the world. And he actually started an antique jewelry business with my mom. But actually, while I was growing up, I was told that the jewelry industry was a terrible industry to go into and to never touch it. But I graduated from NYU and I was really kind of lost and didn't have a particular passion. So I decided to go to GIA. If many of you haven't heard of GIA, that's totally fine. It's really niche in the jewelry space. It's the Gemological Institute of America, and it's the industry leader in diamond grading and gemstone identification. Fast forward a few years, I was working at a diamond wholesale company. A lot of my friends were that age that they were starting to get engaged. They would go online and get super confused and overwhelmed by all of the information. They didn't know where to go, who to trust, or if they were getting a good value. A lot of them would come to me and I'd work with them, walk them through the process, educate them, and make them the perfect ring. One person started referring me to another, and I quickly realized that most people didn't know the first thing about buying a diamond. I kept getting the same questions over and over again. So I guess this was the first time we decided to kind of scale. I took all of that information in my little brain and put it online. I started The Clear Cut as an educational blog that made buying a diamond easy to digest. We let you know what mattered, what didn't matter, and what to look out for when looking for your stone. I then work with clients as a private jeweler to pick out their perfect diamond and then create their ring. We had a really visual product, and we decided to start posting some of our designs on Instagram. It organically grew from there, and we have almost 75,000 organic followers. We have been featured in Vogue, Who What Wear, Guest of a Guest, and The Knot. I had to take a step back and think about what were we doing that was resonating with people. And I realized that the jewelry industry wasn't a terrible industry, it was just broken. A young person nowadays looking for a ring has one of two bad options. One is traditional retail. You go into a brick and mortar store and it's a bit intimidating. You overpay for that extra attention and maybe the glass of champagne, which I know is true from working at Tiffany, but 2,000 brick and mortar jewelry stores closed down throughout the US this year. The other option is online marketplace, which has hundreds of thousands of options, but very little guidance and expertise. The third option for a person maybe in a major city like New York or LA is to know a guy, which is pretty fragmented and not the ideal situation. Any industry where you need to know a guy needs to be disrupted. So at The Clear Cut, we're trying to fill this void, this gaping white space in the jewelry industry, where we couple expert concierge service with e-commerce. So at the Clear Cut, this is how the process works. Let's say my client Kieran, he's been, hinted at by his future fiance on what she wants for her engagement ring. He goes online, kind of gets an idea of what he can afford, and he knows she wants a round diamond. So then he hops on a quick 10-minute consultation with me or one of our experts. We understand his specifications, his preferences, and his budget. We then curate a small selection between 5 to 10 of the highest quality diamonds within his price point. And we have a unique supply chain advantage where we work with some of New York City and abroad's largest diamond wholesalers. We then work together to create his future fiance's perfect ring. It's then shipped out with a GIA certificate for the diamond and a retail insurance appraisal. So I know this may sound like it's a very heavy and manual lift and it isn't a scalable business, but we've been fortunate enough to be part of Techstars, and During our time there, all we do all day, every day, is deep dives into figuring out solutions to these issues. So some criticisms that we've gotten are that it's a one-time purchase, it's a long sales cycle, and customer acquisition. We're not like a typical direct-to-consumer, one of the typical iconic direct-to-consumer brands, like even a Casper or an Away, where even though you may not buy a mattress more than once every 10 years, if you really fall in love with the brand, you may decide to throw away your old mattress and buy a Casper one because you love the brand. We can't convince people to get married, nor should we. So we've had great success with customer acquisition through social, word-of-mouth referrals, and targeted email marketing. And the best thing for us to do is quickly qualify leads. So spending a lot of manual time and this hand-holding process with an unqualified lead is definitely not scalable. But once we have a qualified lead, we quickly segment them into 4 different customer profiles, each with their own unique sales funnel and roadmap. Within that, they have their own individual content marketing campaigns and different types of customer acquisition until we close the sale. And if some of you are still skeptical, I've seen human expertise scaled firsthand at The RealReal. So for any of you that may not have heard of it, The RealReal is a luxury consignment company where every single piece of jewelry is actually authenticated and appraised by a gemologist. And then pricing is communicated over the phone or in person. They're almost $1 billion business. So if they can scale human expertise, we can follow their lead. Our customers don't like our product. They love our product. And they wear it on their hand every single day and are brand advocates for us. The criticism of having an engagement ring as a one-time sale, we don't see it that way. An engagement ring is probably the biggest purchase of a young person's life and one of the most important. When we build our relationships with our clients, they come back to us for anniversary gifts, wedding bands, push presents, and we see the diamond engagement ring as the gateway into all other fine jewelry. We're reinventing the way people are going to buy fine jewelry. So we've scaled from a blog to an Instagram to a quickly growing business. We've been growing a little over 100% quarter over quarter, and we believe that we're going to be the next generation's jeweler for life. And I know I'm supposed to talk about scaling into a big business, but we definitely are still figuring things out. But what I will say is that, What I will say is that if you are passionate about something and you see a problem in the market, don't wait for someone else to fix it. Go out and try to figure it out. It was really, really hard for us to raise any money, and that didn't stop us. And now we're almost at $1 million in revenue. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. My question is, how are you differentiated from sites like Blue Nile and James Allen? I'm assuming you probably have better quality of service. And is your price also better than them?
So we actually have pretty similar pricing to the online marketplaces out right now. We actually don't list any of our inventory online. Everything is curated personally to your specifications, and you either are talking to an expert in person or transacting via email, text message, or even direct message on Instagram.
Hi, great talk. I was wondering, vis-a-vis the startup process you went through, does the fact that the jewelry business can tend to be oriented, or the people that are within it, you know, the sellers, the creators, et cetera, tend to come from come from certain ethnic groups, or that there are certain places like here in New York, 42nd Street, and similar places in other cities, et cetera. Did that make a difference in the process that you used?
don't think it made a difference in the process. I think I had worked on 47th Street in the industry, so I had like a really deep knowledge of it, and my family came from that background, but I think that definitely helped both of us understand the industry better. But we think that, you know, there are definitely like private jewelers throughout 47th Street and in the Diamond District and LA, but there are huge swaths of the US that really only have their mall jewelry store or their local jewelry store to choose from, and there needs to be more options if they're not comfortable transacting online. Yeah, traditional ways, yeah.
I can see your earrings sparkling from back here, so you clearly have a good eye for gems. Since jewelry has historically been a segment that women are more interested in, yet I'm sure many of your clients are men, I'm curious to hear a bit more about your marketing and customer acquisition strategy.
Totally. This is one of our, you know, biggest things that we struggle with every day, that we're creating a brand and a product that needs to be aspirational and made for women, and a purchasing process that is simple enough for a man. So, yeah, and we like have to target both at the same time, because a lot of times in this purchase there isn't a lot of communication. I mean, we're seeing more and more that couples are shopping together, at least in the beginning. But yeah, there are definitely men that go off on their own, so we need to make them feel comfortable as well. So it is a challenge that we're always working on. Thanks.
You mentioned how you're disrupting an industry that has been really resistant to that kind of disruption because you have to know a guy, et cetera. Yet a lot of the reasons I think that the issues that currently plague the jewelry industry exist is because those stores are downstream from major conglomerates that control the diamond trade and things like that. How do you see yourself insulated from the artificial scarcity created by, you know, massive diamond conglomerates? And how do you resist the potential to have one such conglomerate step in and artificially then reduce its prices to be able to compete with you with this kind of model?
So yeah, basically, so we have like a unique supply chain advantage because we have direct access to the cutters and wholesalers, so that comes after. So basically how diamond industry works, it's like first mined, then it's cut, and then it's distributed to wholesalers, and then it goes to retailers. So since brick and mortar retail is doing so poorly right now, a lot of the wholesalers' businesses are in turn suffering, and they don't really have outlets for their supply. So we're acting as this new channel for the wholesalers and cutters' supply. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Our Tech Plus theme, I'm honored to bring our last speaker, Amol Sarva. Amol is a, Amol is a serial entrepreneur, and today he's here as the co-founder and CEO of Knotel, which is one of the most successful successful companies in the highly competitive real estate tech space here in New York. What's unique, though, about Knotel is that its value proposition is not just space. Knotel offers what is called headquarters as a service to enterprises. Among his previous companies, Amol founded Notable, also with a KN, which is a collaborative project communication platform, Halo Neuroscience, which produced a wearable technology that helps boost brain activity and function. So if you've been following up until now, Amol has devoted his life to, number one, giving people a place to work, number two, helping them work together more effectively, and number three, making them smarter. Can you please leave some problems for us to solve? Oh, and Amol also received his PhD in philosophy from Stanford and his BA from Columbia. Incidentally, I also received my PhD from Stanford and my BA from Columbia, but I did not do any of this stuff. So please join me in welcoming the last speaker to the stage, Amol. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. And we both teach at the college, or we both teach at Columbia. I guess he teaches at the business school. I teach an entrepreneurship class at the college. Is there anyone from the college here in the house? Oh, hey. some students right here, kissing up. I don't give attendance marks for showing up here. You just have to show up on Friday at 9 a.m. Be punctual, if you can be. I was asked for a topic. This is the topic. I hope it's OK. I'm going to tell you 7 bad startup ideas. But first, I'm going to recruit you to come and work at Knotel. I'll tell you more about Knotel as we carry on, but that's my email address. Please write to me. You have your phone. Just do it. So I think that a nice way to think about these 7 bad startup ideas is 7 other problems that humanity sometimes suffers from. And the first one is greed, which in 1999 was a very topical mindset. I think you see it sometimes actually now in blockchain land. But in 1999, it was about startups. And I was greedy then. And some friends asked me to come join them to do my first real startup, which was called Gobi. And our idea for Gobi was to give away computers for free so that people could work, get on the internet. And then they would pay $20 a month or something for internet access. This was our unbelievable innovation. Computers were expensive. Not everybody had them. Not everyone was on the internet. And we're like, we'll just give away the computer. And then they'll just owe us, and they'll pay the $20 a month for a year or 2 years or whatever amount of time. And I was recruited to the company by some friends of mine from college, actually, who had started it. They'd only raised $1 million. And they'd raised it from weird investors that weren't like venture. And they, with this million, planned to give away 1 million computers, which was not plausible. I hadn't done the math. And I guess our feeling was that we might just IPO before needing to give out any of those computers. So in this haze of foolishness, I got involved. And I think it felt like I was there for 5 years, but I think I was only there for 4 months in this company. Massively informative and like really a big life-changing experience for me. It was right after I had finished at Columbia College in '98, and it was while I was doing my PhD. I had taken off this little hiatus, and I'd come back to New York to fool around because of greed. The company didn't work out. The next thing that I got involved in, I think is best described as being a lustful venture, which I got involved in really right when I got back to San Francisco. I met a guy who wanted to start a mobile phone company, and I just fell in love with this idea, especially when we got Richard to be involved with us. They, at Virgin, wanted to invest in our company, and we were going to use their brand, and then we were going to go all around and find some mobile phone network to be our partner. And it was January 2000. The crash was coming soon, and soon was unfolding, actually, while we were building the business. And it was just so sexy to be working on this thing with Virgin. But in the haze of that sin, I got distracted by a very, well, it wasn't venture-backed, actually, this company. It was backed by Virgin. And Virgin's actually this dude, Richard, and whatever his whims are and the way he wants to do things. And we weren't traditional startup founders, and the equity and the cap table and all that was really badly weighted in favor of our friends from Virgin. I mean, they were investing $550 million in a PowerPoint, so perhaps that was reasonable. But as far as the company got, that like birth defect of the company at the outset meant many of the founders by the end perhaps didn't do as well as they might have liked to have done. And so I switched my sins next, and I thought, I'm fed up with all this stuff. Virgin actually had done quite well, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how it went well. But my next mistake in life was searching for a startup idea, but with this first in mind. And so I just moved to France. And I was just living in Paris for a year, and I was messing around. I was like, you know, I'm going to just do this my way in a way that makes me happy, and I'm only going to think about that. I don't care about sexy brands or other people's money or markets. I'm just going to go somewhere I want to live, and I'm going to enjoy it. Something nice will come up, and it'll inevitably be a wonderful opportunity. And so that was 2003. It was around the era of tremendous innovation, actually. There were lots of really great companies that were started in 2003. I should have started one. But instead, I was fucking around in Paris where no one was doing anything. That situation may have changed in the 15 or 16 years since then. It is more of a startup ecosystem now. But the lesson here is to be excessively selfish in your selection of priority and opportunity is perhaps to find yourself in a desert of opportunity. So next mistake, and another bad startup idea, is to be lazy. Sometimes people say laziness is good. It's a way to find the solution to a problem. But my particular version of being lazy is I joined McKinsey when I came back when I came back to New York. I was too scared, honestly. After having that experience with Gobi and one or two other little side projects, and then even Virgin Mobile, I thought, I'm not really qualified to start my own company. This is like hard. And with Virgin, I was working for a guy who was very senior to me. He and I was like 15 years younger than him. And I was lucky to be around for that, and it was a great experience, but I thought, well, I can't do what that dude did. It's impossible. I'm just going to go here and like learn some things. And this window of time, I guess 2003, 4, 5, 6-ish, maybe 4, 5, 6, I forget. This is like Facebook is founded, and many other lovely businesses get going while I'm like making PowerPoints for telcos and flying around. It was a poor outcome if you just measure the exit value. So then I got mad, and I actually did get back together with my original Virgin co-founder, this guy John, and we thought, all right, this is annoying. Why are we just like sitting on the sidelines? I was doing whatever, he was doing whatever, and we're like, we should do something that will help us. We should just get even. Let's just do it. And our way of getting even was to clone our old company. So the first thing we started working on when we got back together was a company we called Blue Mobile. And if you've ever seen the Virgin logo, you may recall its coloring is red. And so we thought, well, let's just do Virgin again. Straightforward. We'll make it blue. Instead of an English billionaire, we'll find like an Irish billionaire. Instead of selling in like Target and Radio Shack, we'll sell in Walmart and drugstores. And we started working on this thing. And we were so mad and so focused on just doing this like revengeful thing that the thing started falling apart really fast, actually. The Irish billionaire was fickle, Walmart was annoying, Verizon wasn't that fun. We invested $20 million of other people's money, and then the whole thing just blew up. And somehow in the process of that thing blowing up, we noticed the idea for Peak. And the idea for Peak, if Virgin was cheap smartphones you could buy in a store, if Virgin was cheap phones you can buy in a store, Peak was cheap smartphones you could buy in a store. And so in 2008, around the time the iPhone came out, when there were only 6 million BlackBerries in the world and 3 million Palm Pilots, we thought, well, there can't just be like 9 or 10 million smartphones in the world. Eventually, there's going to be hundreds of millions, maybe billions. We should make one that's cheaper. This was our idea. And it was in some ways a slavish recreation of what we had done with Virgin. It was much harder. And we made this cheap smartphone. It was a $30 smartphone. We sold it all around the world. And this time I was CEO, and halfway through I had to take out my co-founder, and I had to navigate all the things that are too hard when you are the founder. And it all started in this like moment of anger instead of cool repose. So it was an interesting experience. And the next thing I did after that one, because I'll tell you the outcomes in all these separately, but the next time I got back into my little armchair where I come up with project ideas, this time I was like, all right, enough with the like cheap phones. Enough of like working for other people. Let me go back to the home base, which was the place I had spent all this time doing my PhD. I did all this stuff on cognitive science, how does the mind work? And I had run across some ideas when I was finishing my dissertation about how the mind works and some technologies for neuropriming. And so I decided I would start a company about neuroscience. It's called Halo Neuroscience. And Halo Neuroscience, what we decided to do was take a piece of technology that some people had been working on in the lab for maybe 15 or 20 years, and make a gadget that you can put on your head that makes your brain work better. You can look it up sometime. And this gadget, the first application for it, we call it Halo Sport. It looks like headphones. It looks like a music headphone. You put it on. It puts some energy into your motor cortex, and you run faster, jump higher, shoot better. That was in 2013 that we started doing that. And now it is used by many of the world's militaries, elite athletes, folks in the NCAA tournament. I was at the Knicks game. Somebody invited me to the Knicks game yesterday, and this guy like landed on my lap. They were very good seats. And the guy was one of our customers. This guy, Isaiah Hicks, was amazing. So prideful. But a weird and esoteric product that many of you have not run across. I mean, it will be quite some time before any of you uses Halo. Is anybody here like seen a Halo or used a Halo? Is there like one person? The odds are low. And they're probably, yeah, unless you're like a super elite athlete, a professional athlete, military, or some kind of Ironman person, you wouldn't have run across it. And so with this like very ivory tower-ish idea, we made a business that I think is interesting, but it falls prey to some problems. All right, so cheap phones, neuroscience, some of the other stuff sitting on the beach that I was doing. So then I'm like, all right, New York lately has had a wonderful period of high revenue consumer transaction type companies. There's a bunch of these, right? And I'm like, these aren't hard. I'm fucking doing all this neuroscience stuff. Why don't I make like eyeglasses? It can't be that hard. I'll just make a PowerPoint about eyeglasses and I'll launch a business about it, and we will just make a big business. Not exactly the narrative, really, on the way we got to this company, Knotel, but kind of, yeah. I mean, we were running an office with room for 100 people, and we only had 4. The Halo team had moved out and gone on to do some new stuff. We were incubating a few projects. And we're sitting there in the office with all this extra space, so I was always sharing it. And I had all these companies rolling through from time to time, 20 people, 50, 80, whatever. And at a certain point in 2015, late 2015, I'm like, maybe these are my eyeglasses. Maybe these floors of the building are a completely straightforward thing that, if it was deployed differently, could be a large and interesting business. And so now I'm in the eyeglass business. Here's what happened from these little sins of mine. So Gobi, which didn't work out super well, got sold for a fraction of its original capital. Virgin Mobile became a very large business. You can still buy it today. About 10% of all the mobile phone users in the country use Virgin Mobile as a brand. It was a big IPO. But managers and the founders ended up with very little stake at IPO. France, boring. McKinsey, boring. With Blue and Peak, the end of 2012, SoftBank bought Peak from us. And it was a really nice outcome. They put the software into hundreds of millions of phones around the world. There's a chat app that's like a clone of WhatsApp in India called Hike, 500 million monthly uniques. That's based on our software. Halo, my co-founder runs it. It's based in San Francisco. We raised 20 million, and you'll find it around. You can look for it on Amazon. One day you'll see it on the street, I hope. And Knotel is close to 100 million that we've raised so far, and there's other numbers that'll be more public in the weeks and months to come that will tell you how far we've gotten. But we have 37 buildings around New York, San Francisco, and London. We do headquarters as a service, which means it's for real companies, it's not co-working. That's what we do. And so my small lesson for you guys, because like if I do these 7 deadly sins, I have to give you some kind of lesson that tells you how to live your life. And I think all I could come up with was to just choose your poison. I guess I can ask if you guys have some questions. I have a few minutes that I believe I'm permitted to do. Would someone like to raise their hand? Yes?
I'm curious to hear more about your experience in studying for your PhD, how that sort of shaped the way you think about problems. It seems like you meandered a lot throughout life and just found projects to work on, but have you sort of had any sort of way of assessing what the actual point and what it kind of brings to the table?
Yeah, the question was, how did studying for the PhD help you, and many other things also. But the answer is the fox and the hedgehog. So I noticed about myself at some point, probably too late in my life, that I am a fox, not a hedgehog. And once I embraced that, I really started to get going. But when I was a hedgehog, when I would do one thing at a time and really concentrate and try to really be good at it, I found myself really inhibited. And many of you have probably come up through an American system here where you're supposed to be a hedgehog. You're supposed to concentrate, do one thing, you're the CEO, take it tape to tape, doesn't matter what's going on. Well, it turns out like it's fun to be involved in 75 companies. And you can contribute in interesting ways in a lot of them. And you can start 3 at the same time, and one might not work, and the other one may go, and then you'll get a lot bigger, and inside it are nested many other Matryoshka dolls. So that's my answer. Look up the fox and the hedgehog. Yeah?
A fascinating talk. Team for the founders is one of the key components of success, if not the component. You did mention about knocking out your co-founder. What was the thought process? What have you learned? Any incremental?
About taking out my co-founder?
Yep.
Dude, you got to do it sometimes. And the lesson's not about co-founders. The lesson, well, actually, I was with a guy yesterday who reminded me that there is no partnership that has lasted 50 years that you can think of except for maybe Buffett and Munger. And it used to trouble me that I had failed to be truly loyal to my co-founder. And it troubled me enough that we almost killed the company. But the lesson's not about whether you can stay with a co-founder or not. It's about conflict and difficult decisions, which will be yours when you run the company. But they aren't yours when you don't. And so there is no training until you're there. And so you can do some kind of setups, and if you're mean, maybe it'll come easier to you when you get around to it. Turns out I am not nice. I'm very low on the niceness quotient. And so it has been easy for me to take out different people at different times or make difficult decisions. And it's not nice, I understand. Something else?
Hi, thank you for being here today. I have one question about Knotel.
You're welcome.
And it seems that you guys are changing your business strategy. I work at Transform Finance at the Soho location, and I know you guys are now moving towards catering towards larger companies rather than the small ones.
Yeah, I mean, from the outset, our plan was to serve larger companies, and we thought initially that larger companies meant 20 people. So we would open lots of buildings, and we would put people into them, and then we'd be very open-minded about who came into a building early on. So for example, you may be in one of the properties that's like that. And over time, what we found is that actually we have a very appealing offer for 100, 500, 1,000, 5,000, like very large operations. And it's something that I guess we prototyped serving 20-person companies. So there are some buildings like the one that you're in that might have a couple floors with 50 people on each floor, and then a couple floors that are more cellular with smaller teams. And as we are growing and serving larger and larger companies, what we're finding is there's a segment of the market that we suck at. We suck at co-working. Like if you need a box for 1 to 10 people in it, don't come to us. Like type in the internet co-working, you'll find a million options. Like that is not where we're at. But the other 99% of the market, I mean, 99% of labor works in large teams. 1% works in a small box. So the 99% of the market, that's called office today. And that's our market. And so it is a bit annoying as we sort of churn around and make mistakes, and I apologize if we've upset you, but by next year, I think, and already actually, some of the largest Fortune 500 companies in the world are already our customers. Like the Body Shop headquarters is at Knotel. Starbucks is a large design team in New York with their own fancy Starbucksy spot, and that's at Knotel. And so I think in the years ahead, you know, it will be crazy for firms like Google or JP Morgan to build their own office for 100,000 workers. They are going to treat it as an outsourced service, the way they do servers and engineering and marketing all on a performance basis. And so there might be some that still build buildings, but I think in general people will laugh when they try to do that. Another question? Yeah.
My name is Prateek Jain. I'm chair of this conference. You started this talk with, I want to recruit you, here's my email address. So if all of my audience members emailed you, what would you have us do?
Oh, yeah, we need to hire 250 people by the end of the year. We're only at 150. So I think we could probably hire you all. I assume there's some overlap in your skills, so you may not all start on the same day. But there will be a road ahead. But yeah, I mean, we do all the things that companies do. I mean, part of what our company does is we run a lot of buildings. So if some of you know about that, that's great. We acquire a lot of real estate, and we do partnerships with lots of owners. We are opening markets all around the world, San Francisco, London, Berlin, LA, other places, and we'll need people to go live there and have fun. We do marketing, sales, technology, product development. We design new kinds of furniture, new kinds of interiors. We have software that runs buildings and spaces. We do a lot of stuff. Yeah, in the back.
You've gone into so many different industries, and I'm wondering, when you're kind of considering starting a new business, how do you learn about the space? Like, what are the hacks to kind of get the insider information, and is it mentorship?
Well, one thing you may notice about entrepreneurs is they rarely repeat industry area. It's quite rare, and it takes quite a lot of fortitude to be an entrepreneur who's like, cool, I did a payments company, now my next company is a payments company, and my next one's a payments company. Like you saw Iqbal earlier, and Ikram, he's like, he did like a peer-to-peer money company, Venmo, and now he's doing a peer-to-peer messaging company. And you're like, why are you doing that? Launch another, Venmo. Why don't you do the bigger one this time? And the reason is entrepreneurs hate every industry they get into. Once you're there, you find out why you should not have tried. And it sucks, and you find out you hate all the people, and you piss off some people, and you do have like a nice network, and people are all like, oh yeah, do Virgin Mobile again. But it's different the next time, and there's no magic touch the first time, and it's annoying. So how do I learn about industries? Well, the same way you do. I mean, what I hope you do is you have a broad base of general knowledge. You go and talk to lots of people. You interview other entrepreneurs and see what they're working on. You go visit some big companies. You try to sell something to someone, and that's the way of gathering knowledge. I think one thing that people don't do that they ought to do, and we did this when we were getting going on Knotel, we were running a smallish business, this like 10,000 feet with 100 people about 2 years ago. Now we run about 1 million feet. But when we had 10,000 feet, I stopped and I did like the McKinsey top-down analysis of the business we were running, which I don't think people do that often. A lot of time I'll meet entrepreneurs and it's just a bottoms up, like it's working. But when we looked at the business and we benchmarked it and we did an inventory of what other co-working operators were doing, that is when we found some major insights. I mean, we found that the margin markup in co-working is very large. There's like a 40 to 50% gross margin, even though the companies on the other side save money. So it's a better real estate business that's compressing other costs for you. So we found that. We're like, wow, that's interesting. And the other thing we found was that 80% of the people in co-working were teams of 1 to 10, less than 10. And that's why we were like, oh, wait, this floor is actually just 3 teams of 20 plus. Maybe that's the way to go for it. So 20 plus to us meant large at the time. And now as we're rolling, we're finding it's getting bigger. So you got to be in it to win it, too. I mean, you can't just wait around. Yes, here in the front? Yeah.
And during lunch feels they need to take a half an hour nap. How amenable are they to the idea of having spaces
Naps?
in the design?
How popular are naps? Yeah, they are. I mean, the office is changing a lot, yeah, and they don't know how it's changing. We know much better. We're opening 100 buildings this year. We're going to know better than any real estate planner at any company what people want. And we are putting in places, not that many sleeping environments, but quite a wide variety. Music rooms and meeting rooms and cafes and all that kind of stuff, yeah. But I think I'm out of time. So thank you for the question, and thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you so much, Amol. I'm just going to wrap up, take just a couple minutes to do so. Those of me who have had me for class know that I do this, that I have 3 takeaways, and they're going to be very brief. But the first is that I think all of you saw the value that even platforms have to differentiate. And I think the simple way to think about building a technology platform business is to put out a platform and expect everyone to come to the platform. But you heard from Hayley that they thought very carefully about the kind of category they wanted to be in. It's the prestige kind of category. You heard from Olivia the kind of problems that exist when men go to shop for women or the couple goes together to look for an engagement ring. The education problem is a source of the matching inefficiency. And I think even with Amol, he told you about if you're just a small company, you don't go to Knotel for headquarters as a service. The second kind of takeaway that I picked up from Amol is that there's a lot of value to kind of industry hopping. And I think that's really valuable. One thing that you might not know is that there's a lot of research on entrepreneurship that looks at who becomes entrepreneurs. And one of the most consistent findings is that it's those people who have worked in many different industries that are actually most likely to start companies themselves, in part because there's a lot of value to cross-pollination. We often think of going from one industry to another industry as a bad thing, in part because it serves as a signal of hedging. But in fact, it can hold a lot of value, especially if you're trying to do something creative. And the final takeaway, and this is like a personal takeaway for me, is that meggings are a thing. No idea. So thank you all for this. I think we have like one more announcement, or no, we're good. See everyone at the break then. All right, thank you.
Bathrooms are downstairs.